Thank you for the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Grant me those three things and I'm going to have a pretty good life. Now, today we're going to talk about step one. But in order to effectively discuss step one, we need to do it in two phases. So we're going to talk about that first part, which is we admitted we were powerless. Now that addiction could be alcoholism, narcotics, gambling, sex, workaholism, pride. That's a good one. Adrenaline can be an addiction for some people, or an obsession. Gambling, overeating, whatever that addiction is. The phrase is always used, once an addict, always an addict. Now in that first step, when we go to a meeting, we state, hi, my name is Chuck and I'm an alcoholic. And I do that just to belong, not to start something. Okay? But that's the only time I use that, because the whole purpose of that admission is surrender. But keep in mind that surrender is not giving up. It's giving over. It's giving over to that higher power that guides us and loves us and directs us in our lives. Now, physically, in addiction, there is a craving. Our mindset has an obsession. An obsession is when we think about it all the time. And that obsession over time creates like a physical craving. The chemicals in our body and the biochemistry in our brain says, I really want to drink. I really want to eat a whole cake. I want to eat a whole quart of ice cream, whatever it is. And mentally we're obsessed with that. What we can only see. And as in the early days of my non-drinking, I could, in my mind, hear and see almost like a post-traumatic stress disorder flashback. My drinking days at a lounge. I could hear the bartender getting the ice and cleaning the glasses and pouring the drinks and the ice cubes going in the drinks, because I had that obsession going on. And emotionally, I became dependent on it, because when things went well, I wanted to celebrate. And a lot of the reason for that celebration was unworthiness. I didn't feel I deserved all that, so I numbed it. And at other times, things would go bad, and I didn't want to feel bad, and I got obsessed with feeling better, so I had a drink, or a few other things, because it was the 80s, to help me feel better. Because you see, what happened was, I had surrendered my power, the power that is God expressing through me, through misguided thought and belief and perception. I had surrendered my power to the effects of the drug. Now, let's talk about the process of addiction for just a moment. First, we're discontented with our daily life. Things aren't going well. That's that second part. Our lives are unmanageable. And that's no fun. For some strange reason, we never have enough money. Now, the fact that we're spending $1,500 a day on booze might have something to do with it. Okay? But we're also, before we start with our drinking, this is where we are. This is what we call a dry drunk. We're thinking like a person who's obsessed and compulsive, but we aren't quite doing it yet. But we're curious about it. And so we try it, and it feels good. There's this euphoric feeling. I feel better. And one thing we say about 12 steps, and Reverend Chris Terry, their organization, she said, I'm Chris Terry and I'm an alcoholic, which means if one fabric softener is good, 5 are better. And that's how we feel. And so we have more, and then we escape into this second life. This life of obsession, this life of dependency. And it's a life that leads to oblivion, because it's another life, separate and apart from the ones that people see when we're not engaged in that. And so now that obsession is full-blown, and that addiction sets in. Now our body starts to crave. Just like a friend of mine loved her cup of coffee. Actually, the mother of my kids in Colorado. And she had an infection where the doctor said to her, you need to get off of caffeine until we get this healed. And her comment was, I have never craved coffee like I did for those 3 weeks. And I couldn't wait for those 3 weeks to be over so I could have my coffee again. That's the addiction, the obsession. Now, let's look at addiction. It's a physical craving, it's a mental obsession, it's an emotional dependency, and we have surrendered our power to the effects of the drug. That's where we begin. It's that addictive, what I call mindset. Now, the time frame for all of this to take place may be instant. With nicotine, as I'm sure you know from working with people who are smokers, for many it takes one cigarette to become totally addicted, because nicotine is more powerful as an addictive drug than heroin. For others, it takes time. The time frame varies, but the process is always the same. And here's what happens. We get to a point where it doesn't work anymore. Okay? What I'm getting out of nicotine these days isn't working anymore. That's why I'm working to get off of nicotine. Now, I'll be honest with you, because I know your career and your vocation. With all that's going on with my move, I've kind of taken a break.
Hitting bottom.
Huh? Oh, I'm hitting bottom with it. I'll tell you right now. But I'll after, as you know, I'm going to be, and you'll hear about this at the annual meeting. I am moving back to Colorado, and when I get back there, I'm going to get back on track. But right now, adding that to my stress level, because there is stress and withdrawal and all that, I haven't worried about it, and my smoking's gone back up a little bit. I'm back up at that pack a day instead of that half a pack that I was at. But where I am is wanting to find a way out. Now, one of the things I'm looking forward to, if I could just have a quick aside in Colorado, down here there's only one meeting for Nicotine Anonymous, and it's way over by White Rock Lake. And with the challenge I'm dealing with and healing with my eyes, I don't like driving at night, especially in that crazy traffic. In Denver, there are meetings every day, one or two. The support is there. Now, let's just think about something. If you read what's called the Big Book, it's called the Alcoholics Anonymous. And it was called the Big Book because when they first made it, it was only 164 pages, and they wanted it to look big, so they put great big margins in it and made it big. And so it got called the Big Book. And it says in there that we were spiritually ill. Physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually ill. No. Alcoholism and addiction and obsession is not a spiritual illness. And it's important for us to realize this in recovery, because the higher self dwells in the land of perfection, of creative partnership with our higher power, a land of wisdom, courage, and peace. And it's our higher self that has that connection with God. It's that higher self that knows even at the height of our addiction, there's a good person inside, trying to get out, trying to express, but constantly covering it up with blanket after blanket after blanket after blanket of addiction. And like I used to say, because that's what I was, the addiction du jour. Am I going to be a workaholic today? Am I going to be an alcoholic today? Okay. Which one am I going to pick to escape today? And that's what's going on there. But the higher self allows us to hit bottom and seek help. Now, I was, and I guess I still am, I think I have to recertify, a certified lifeguard. And one day in raging white water, a gal went out of the raft, and instinctively my training kicked in and I jumped into that water. There's 1.5 miles of raging white water. And I went after her, and I knew when I got to her, in her panic, she was going to try and make a stepladder out of me. So what did I had to do? I had to subdue her and get control of her so that I could take her to safety. And there are several procedures that we have to get them under control. But one thing we don't do, and this is why so many inexperienced people drown, is just swim up and say, here, because they'll put us under with them. And so I got control of her. And that's what our higher power does to us. It pushes us down to that bottom where we're helpless, but we're not hopeless. And now a higher power can seek support to recover and be saved from the raging waters, if you will, of addiction. And so the question now moves, after 28 years, am I alcoholic today? And the question I say to you, who's doing the abusing? The alcohol or the alcoholic? Is he abusing the alcohol or is the alcohol abusing him? Now the 12-step program indicates, doesn't directly say, but indicates that it's the alcohol that's doing the abusing. And yet I knew in my heart of hearts that I was doing the abusing. Because I was making the choice to take those drinks, to snort that coke, okay, to try those different drugs that I tried. I didn't do uppers. I didn't do cocaine very much because it's an upper and I don't need uppers. That's pretty apparent from my personality. But I played with those things. Now, the definitions that we put to an alcoholic are things like alky, boozer, juicer, lush, wino, drunk. Do any of those apply to me today? You know me. Do they apply to me today? I'm not alcoholic anymore. I'm no longer an alcoholic. I chose to become what's called a teetotaler. I totally drink tea. Now, the truth is, I'm a coffee totaler because I like coffee. I drink coffee and water these days, or maybe a nice smoothie juicer. But I don't drink alcohol. So I am no longer alcoholic. And my mindset is non-alcoholic. Now, there are times when I can slip back, when things are getting rough, and that's when I have to re-heal my thinking. But I'm not an alcoholic today. I'm healed of alcoholism. Just like when they diagnosed me with delayed PTSD, they said we can't heal it or cure it. We can just show you how to live with it. And I'm real good at not paying attention to those things. And I haven't had a flashback in over 10 years. Because I did it our way. The way we teach in here. And so the root of recovery is to discover the source of our power. And when we realize that we're not the power, that our higher power is working through us to heal us and putting us in front of the people that can help us, that can guide us into recovery. Sponsors, therapists, life coaches, counselors, ministers, prayer partner practitioners, seminars, workshops, whatever our higher power leads us to for help, we first have to accept that power, that source, is our higher power. Like one man said, the power that's behind me, the power of God, is greater than any obstacle that can be before me. And I could sit here until tomorrow morning giving you examples of how that works. Because that's the real truth. Now, once we get to that point, now we learn a practical spiritual way of life. To keep that power that is greater than us, that higher power, working through us in everything we do. Saying to us, okay, you were at odds with that person for a while. Go, and as the carpenter's son said, make peace with your brother before he takes you to court. Now, he may not be taking you to court, but he may be taking you to task. So make peace with that person and only clean your side of the street. That's part of our practical approach. And it is so powerful and so spiritual when we do that. I recently did have to do that. And I remember walking away feeling so free and so light. Even though the particular person that I went to proceeded to lecture me, okay, that's not what it's about. It's not to change that person's thinking, but to free me for my shame and guilt. You see, with God, we can be a powerful expression of life, of love in everything we do. We can look for the good in everywhere we go. Now, I'm sure you'll agree with me, we don't always do a great job at that. We have those times when we go, okay, God's out there, God's in my life, but kingdom of heaven's within me, so why does it feel like hell? And that's because we've slipped back in our thinking. We forgot that even in this thing that looks like a massive challenge in front of us, that God is still guiding us, and when we come out, it's going to be better. And it always has been for me. The question I ask people when I'm sponsoring them is, what do you obsess about? And usually they just say, if it's alcoholism, alcohol. I said, oh really? That's it? Just alcohol? Well, I kind of been obsessing about this girl at work. Oh, and the clerk at the drugstore. Oh, and the clerk. You're getting my point. Okay? And I it's like every weekend, all I want to do is grab my golf clubs and go out and golf. Forget about doing something with my children and my wife, but I'm going to go play golf. So what do you obsess about? If you are, the point is to realize that you are obsessive, that you are looking for that escape, and how can you find a practical way to heal it? Because I have people say, oh, there's good obsessions. I say, no, I don't believe that's true. Based upon the description of obsession that you would use, that's true. There are good obsessions, because I know what you're saying. But based on that very same description, my word would be passion. Passion is when I have a drive to do something. Obsession is just when I'm thinking about something all the time. And so we look for that, because if we learn what we're obsessing about, we learn those areas in our lives that we can get some help to heal. And if I have an obsession, if I'm back in my wild days, and every gorgeous lady I see, I'm not seducing, but I sure am leaving the door open. Okay, I'll leave it at that, since we're in a church right now. But when I was in that wasn't working. Yeah, I had a lot of friends and etc. But it wasn't working because I was obsessing about it. I was obsessing about being that kind of person. But once I realized that with the faith of God, anything is possible, I could even heal that. Because I knew that surely the presence of God was in every woman that I met. And that this goodness, this love that women are, their connection to the divine is with their heart. I could begin to see that with the women that I came in contact with. And so I'm no longer obsessed with that. Because I do my best to express God's love and power through me. And that's what makes me, as promised in the big book, happy, joyful, and free. It's really that simple. And so, am I powerless? Of and by myself, pretty much. I have mental power. I have physical power. I have emotional power. But my real power is my spiritual power. Because that's what gives me those other three. And that spiritual power is my higher power's connection with the all power, the all-loving power, that is God, that is life, that is all of life. That's the source of my power. And if I stay connected to that, I'm no longer that fella who hit bottom. And it didn't work anymore. And that is why today, when I wake up, I don't say, good God, it's morning. I say, good morning, God. That's why I wake up and say, God's love is my love. God's peace is my peace. God's power is my power. And God's life is my life. That's why I say that every morning, because that's how I want to go out and see the good in everything. And that's available to all of us when we understand that we are powerful because we are expressions of the God that we are. And so it is.